So this video is going to go over just a few more advanced Bootstrap techniques that you can use for Project 2. We're going to be working with this glitch project right here, which you can remix if you want, but you won't have access to edit this one. This is what this project looks like, and I just am demonstrating a few different techniques with it. So the first technique that I want to look at is this has several different sections with different background colors. So this first section has a black background, then we go to a white background, then we go to this green background, then we go back to the black background. And this is an example of a time when you'll actually want to use multiple containers. So before we were only using one container and all of our rows were going inside it. But if you look at this project, I actually have 4 containers, and they just have different classes on them. So this first container is class container fluid, so it's going to go all the way across the page. I've given it the class full width, and I've given it the class header. And if you look over here, class header gets a background color and a different color. So my default right here, container fluid, margin bottom 5, MB-5 says I want you to put some margin on the bottom of this. And you can look at those classes in the Bootstrap documentation. I believe they're in the utility section. And then I go to another container fluid that has the class highlight 2. And highlight 2 has a background color and a color. So anytime you want to create a big visual break like that, you can create multiple containers and give them classes to achieve that effect. The second thing that I want to look at here is this green section takes up exactly the height of my screen. So I'm scrolling, and then I come to this nice break that really focuses my attention on something. And obviously you can only do this if you have a very limited amount of content here, maybe an image that's going to go in the middle or a big image or something like that. But I can't have a bunch of paragraphs here because I don't know if they'll fit on everybody's screen. But the way you achieve this effect is I've also given it this class snappy. And what that class does is say that this has a min height of 100 VH. So usually we give our dimensions in maybe pixels or percentages, but this uses the unit VH, and 1 VH is equal to 1% of the height of the viewport, so the space that's available to display the web page. So 100 VH says I want this container to take up 1 viewport. So that says at minimum this section is going to be as tall as the viewport. And if I go down to a mobile view, you can see that I haven't been good and done my text on this, but it expands to larger than that if I need it to. All right, the second thing that I want to look at here is just to review having things appear and disappear. So the header for this starts off as a 2-column header, and then when I go smaller, it becomes 1 column, and this guy appears, which is a relative link down to the content. So let's take a look at this. And I'm going to pop this out. All right. So right here, A class equals read more, display extra small block, display medium none, and the href is # section 1. So let's start with this href. Href that starts with a pound says jump down to the thing that has the ID section 1. So this is div ID section 1, and when you click on this href, it will just jump you down to this section. So you can create links within a page. Don't worry about how this displays and why it looks like a little down arrow. If you want to look at this CSS, some of it's interesting, you can look at it, but it's a little more advanced than we're covering in this class right now. What is important is understanding why I see it on mobile and small screens and why I don't see it here. So the way this works is in Bootstrap, we are always going to have a default, and then we're always going to overwrite that default for some sizes. So by default, this is going to be display block, and it's going to be display block for extra small and up. And then when we get to medium, for medium and up, it's going to be display none. So I will see it on extra small, and I will not see it on medium large and extra large. So that's how that appears. I could, for example, have this image disappear when I get down to a smaller size if I wanted to. If we inspect this image, there's a few more things that I'm doing here. We haven't talked too much about this, but this image is in a col 6. And when we get down to small, it's obviously going to take up the whole screen. But if you look at how this background is behaving, it's actually behaving a little differently than we've looked at before. And the way that you get that effect, so basically it's kind of scaling so that it always looks nice as a background for that. And the way that that is happening is that it has the background size set to cover. And so that gives you that effect. You can also see that this div has a minimum of height of 50 VH. So at minimum, it's going to take up half of the screen. So I want this to be kind of a big opening section rather than potentially a smaller opening section. All right, the other thing I wanted to talk about is a lot of you will do profiles that scroll down like this, and you just read and you get to the end of the story. But some of you might want to break things up, and this can be a really interesting way to tell a story because it lets us relate different parts together. So one thing to really start thinking about, because you now have a lot of control in how you design, that's the point of this class, is you can start thinking about how that design interacts with your text. So what is the transition like between this section and this section, right? So if I had this black right next to this white, that's a really sharp transition. That tells me maybe something's really changing, right? I can use that to kind of add meaning to my text. Or I can maybe have a more gradual or more gentle transition because I go through this kind of light green with a big block quote in it, and then I get to the black. So it's more like a gradual easing into a new section. So it's just about thinking about how you want readers to experience what you're writing and using the visual design to enhance that. So another thing that I'm doing here to kind of play with that, and I'm just demonstrating techniques, obviously this is all nonsense, is you can break it out onto different pages. So maybe instead of this kind of just continuing down, you want to have the user go to a new page and you kind of want it to go over. So I'm going to click on this and go over. Right? I might want to isolate things on a page. So I might want to have this video and you read and then all of a sudden you just watch this really large video. And another Bootstrap thing to look at is embedding these videos because it works a little bit like responsive images do. So I've got my container, I've got my row, I've got my column, and then I have this div class equals embed responsive 16 by 9. And basically all you do for YouTube videos to make them responsive is wrap them in this div. And if you go to the Bootstrap documentation under, let's see, where is it? Search responsive. All right, if I go to embeds right here, this will show me how to do a responsive embed for a YouTube video. And again, this iframe, you're just going to get from YouTube. So if I want to embed this video, I come down here to share, I click on embed, and I copy this and paste it into this div. 16 by 9 should be the ratio that YouTube videos, most of them at least, are in. So that'll be the one that you will want to use. So again, we're just talking about breaking down content and understanding how it, or more effectively controlling how it relates to each other. So, scrolling all the way down a page might be the best way for your content to relate to each other, but you might also kind of want to play with this, or more creative ways of breaking things up and having less on a screen and maybe really isolating things or playing with the direction that people are going. Maybe you want to send someone to something like this. Maybe you want to play with, again, yeah, things like this. So play around in this glitch project. There's a lot of kind of different techniques. I'm playing a lot with spacing, isolating things, drawing attention to some things, drawing less attention to other things. It's just a lot of ideas that you can pull from, look at the CSS, see how it's done, and use these techniques in your own projects.